Hackers had created such a perfect plan to steal nearly $1 billion from the Central Bank of Bangladesh that now, even the strongest security system in the world could not stop them. For an entire year, they used invisible malware to spy on the network, using 3 different time zones and national holidays as their shield. But those who planned everything with such meticulous detail made one tiny mistake that even a second-grade child wouldn't make. Just a single spelling mistake washed away their dreams of billions of dollars. Welcome once again to Ancientgraphy Videos viewers. In January 2015, an email was received on the server of the National Bank of Bangladesh along with a zip file. This was a phishing email that contained the CV of a job applicant. 3 bank employees not only opened the email, but also downloaded that CV, completely unaware that this action of theirs would cause the biggest robbery in the history of Bangladesh. What happened was that the virus contained in that zip file opened a backdoor in one of those 3 computers. The hackers who sent this email hit their target perfectly, and they activated malware on the infected computer. This was no ordinary computer virus. It had a total of 3 parts. The first part left a loophole, a secret backdoor, in the bank's private network. The second part ensured that whatever information left through this secret door remained untraceable to anyone, establishing an encrypted channel. The third part was the most dangerous. This virus continuously scanned the bank's network and recorded all activity. Who is doing what, how money is transferred, which PCs will remain turned on during holidays, and so on. Over the next year, without being noticed, the hackers learned so much about the Bangladesh National Bank's network that perhaps even the bank's own employees did not know. During this same year, they also found out that the foreign currency reserve account of the National Bank of Bangladesh was held at the Federal Reserve System in New York. The Federal Reserve System is the Central Bank of America, commonly abbreviated as the Fed. Almost every country in the world keeps its foreign currency reserves, meaning their dollars, in America's Federal Reserve System. In a way, it is a bank for banks. For instance, if a country needs to import oil, it transfers money from its account at the New York Fed to the Fed account of the other country. The hackers now knew that billions of Bangladesh's dollars were sitting in the Fed. But to transfer money from here, banks worldwide use a specialized system known as SWIFT. This is the largest international bank transfer system in the world. You can think of it as a kind of WhatsApp, but not for ordinary people. It is exclusively for the national banks of countries, used to move billions and trillions of dollars from one country to another every single day. Now the hackers knew that if they wanted to steal $1 billion, meaning 100 crore dollars, from the New York Fed, they had to gain access to this SWIFT software. After penetrating the Bangladesh Bank's network, the hackers' next mission was to locate the specific computer used to run the SWIFT software so they could control it and withdraw money from the New York account. However, the hackers had only compromised the Bangladesh Bank's network, not the New York Fed or the SWIFT system itself. SWIFT is an extremely secure system because it handles the most sensitive payments globally. But like every computer system, it had a vulnerability, and that was human error. The hackers eventually located the exact computer in the Bangladesh Bank network where SWIFT transfers were authorized. Instead of trying to hack the SWIFT system directly, they began monitoring these specific computers. For months, the hackers observed how bank employees logged into the system, how they typed orders, and how they verified them. By now, the hackers had learned how to mimic the bank employees perfectly. But simply running the system wasn't enough. The real task was erasing their tracks and avoiding capture after the crime. To achieve this, they gained access to the bank's past transfer records and studied them thoroughly. They analyzed what the bank's typical large transactions looked like, when those transfers were made, who they were sent to, and what specific details were written with them. They mastered all these nuances so that when they pulled off the world's biggest heist, the system would assume it was just a routine, everyday transfer. Now they had both computer control and a solid plan. But here, they showed further cleverness. They realized that if they attempted to transfer the entire $1 billion all at once, an alarm bell might ring somewhere because such a massive sum could trigger requests for extra authorization. Therefore, the hackers decided to divide this massive theft into smaller installments. Approximately 1 year before the theft, in May 2015, 5 accounts were opened at the RCBC Bank in Manila, the capital of the Philippines. Only $500 were deposited into each account, and then these accounts sat quietly for a year. While the exact total is unconfirmed, 5 accounts were opened in the Philippines and 1 in Sri Lanka, all under fake names. By February 2016, the hackers had set everything up. They had gained access to everything required to execute this crime. February 4th, 2016, this was a Thursday. At night, once the bank employees had gone home, the hackers entered the Bangladesh Bank network for the final time. They accessed the Bangladesh Bank account held at the New York Federal Reserve Bank and sent a total of 36 transfer requests, one after the other. The total amount of these 36 transactions added up to $951 million, which is just a little short of $1 billion. If there was one absolute masterstroke in this entire plan, it was the timing of the heist. The hackers not only took advantage of a long weekend, but they also designed a brilliant plan utilizing 3 different time zones. Bangladesh, where the theft was occurring, New York, where the actual money was kept, and the Philippines, where the money was being sent. The time was different in all 3 locations, and the hackers took full advantage of this time gap. When Thursday night arrived in Bangladesh, their weekend began because Friday is a weekly holiday there. The banks closed, and there was no one present to monitor any suspicious activity. However, at that exact moment, it was Friday morning in New York. Meaning, while Bangladesh slept, the employees at the New York Fed were arriving at work, and processing these transfers seemed like a completely normal task to them. From Thursday night through the entirety of Friday in New York, the hackers had an open field, but they also played another deep tactical move. The following Monday, February 8th, was a Chinese New Year holiday in the Philippines. This meant that even if a request to alert the Philippine bank and lock the accounts was sent on Monday, that request would only be received on Tuesday when they logged into their Swift software. Consequently, the hackers had 4 full days from Friday to Monday, 3 countries, 3 time zones, and 4 days of silence. This was the most calculated heist in human history. The calculations were perfect, but what about unexpected haste? Friday morning had arrived in New York. The Fed was receiving one Swift request after another, all appearing completely legitimate. The Fed began processing these transactions. Millions here, millions there, money started flowing like water into the hackers' various accounts. Among these transactions was one for $20 million, destined for an account in Sri Lanka. Such a large sum was meant for a small charity foundation, but the Fed did not become suspicious. They approved the request, and the money left for Sri Lanka via Germany. But along the way, a human error flipped the entire game. While writing the account title, Shalika Foundation, the hackers accidentally misspelled it as Shalika Foundation, missing the letter O in the word foundation. Even this mistake wasn't caught by the Fed. Instead, it was flagged by the German bank through which the transaction was being routed. The German bank wrote back to the Fed stating that something seemed wrong. This was the exact moment chaos erupted at the New York Fed, and they realized they had fallen victim to a deception. They immediately tried to contact the Bangladesh Bank, but it was Friday there. The bank was closed, and there was no one to pick up the phone. $81 million had already been transferred, but the Fed held the remaining transactions. Meanwhile, at 4:00 a.m., the hackers completed their work and logged out of the Swift network. The malware they left behind was now silently erasing all evidence from the system. But the question arises, wasn't there any system in such a large bank that could detect this theft? Absolutely, there was. In a corner of the Bangladesh Bank office sat an HP LaserJet printer whose job was to print out all Swift transactions. Whether it was a holiday or not, this printer printed every incoming and outgoing transaction. However, the hackers knew about this printer too, and they hacked it in such a way that it would print, but it would only feed out blank sheets of paper. An employee was assigned to this printer, tasked with monitoring incoming and outgoing transactions even on holidays. When he saw the blank prints, he assumed it was just a technical glitch and left the issue to be checked on Saturday without investigating further. Saturday morning was nothing short of a nightmare for the officers of the Bangladesh Bank. On one hand, the printer was feeding out blank paper, and on the other hand, the SWIFT system had become locked. When the system was finally opened after numerous attempts, the ground slipped beneath the staff's feet. There was a barrage of red flags and warnings arriving one after another from the New York Fed. But by then, it was far too late. The hackers had sent a total of 35 requests, out of which only 5 were approved. That single spelling mistake, which stopped $20 million from going to Sri Lanka, also brought the remaining $850 million worth of transactions under suspicion. But what happened to the $81 million that had already reached the Philippines? From here, the story becomes even more interesting. Just as the hackers had anticipated, well before Monday, the Bangladesh Bank sent a stop payment message to the RCBC Bank in the Philippines. But they received no response. Why? Because Monday was a Chinese New Year holiday there. On Tuesday morning, as soon as the bank opened, the cash was withdrawn from those 5 accounts, even though they received the messages after opening the Bangladesh SWIFT message system. Here, all suspicion fell on the RCBC Bank manager, suggesting she intentionally allowed the cash to be withdrawn before opening the SWIFT system. Furthermore, this was done from 5 accounts that hadn't seen a single transaction for the past year. To launder this money, the massive casinos of Manila were utilized. Inside the casinos, the cash was swapped for chips, and after moving through the system, it was eventually sent to Hong Kong. News of this robbery echoed across the entire world. Over the past several years, multiple investigations and court cases have taken place. Investigators held deep suspicions regarding that RCBC bank manager who permitted the cash withdrawal, despite the stop payment message. Later, the court held that manager responsible in various money laundering cases and sentenced her to 7 years in prison for each case. Today, 10 years have passed since this incident, but neither the hackers have been identified, nor has that $81 million been recovered. This event left the Bangladesh National Bank in a very strange state of mind. On one hand, they suffered the grief of losing $81 million, but on the other hand, they shared the joy of saving $850 million all because of a single spelling mistake. Hopefully, you will thoroughly like and share this video from Ancientgraphy as well. Thank you immensely for your love-filled comments. See you in the next spectacular video.